Correct. I was in New York City on Thursday afternoon, and a car revved up its engine, and my heart skipped a beat, and I asked people around me, did you just hear that? And they didn't know what I was talking about, and I'm so used to always listening out for that siren, and it's not a normal way for anyone to live, and there's no free society in the world that would enable a situation to continue where you have thousands of missiles raining on your cities and where you have potential tunnels with terrorists intent on killing or kidnapping your children coming into your neighborhoods. And therefore, Israel, a country which all we want is to have peace. All we would want is our neighbors to lay down their arms and say it's over, and we would immediately do the same. We have no choice but to continue making sure that we restore a sense of quiet and that our children can go to sleep at night without a fear of the air raid sirens and without a fear that a terrorist might be tunneling into their house. And I want to emphasize, because this is important especially for listeners in New York to hear, this is not an issue of Hamas versus Israel. This is an issue of Islamic jihad against the free world. This is an issue of and again, it's not against Islam and it's not against Muslims. I know very many moderate Muslims who are also part of this battle, who also can't live freely in these Islamic countries. This is a battle of faith-based people and people around the world against people who are determined not just to destroy Israel, but then to destroy America and to destroy any people throughout the Middle East. There are Christians who are subjected to the worst possible persecution, and this is what this battle is about. And therefore, anyone who suggests that Israel should simply call off all attacks against these terrorist sites and just agree to some kind of a ceasefire. Yes, I'm here as a member of the Israeli parliament saying we can't do that because of Israel's interests. But this is also the interest of the United States of America, it's the interest of Christians around the world, and it's an interest of Muslims around the world who want to live freely as well. That within a half hour of a quote-unquote ceasefire that Israel agreed to, Hamas terrorists jumped out of a tunnel and killed our soldiers and wreaked havoc on any potential ceasefire. There's never been a ceasefire, by the way, with Hamas or any kind of a terror organization. Has the United States succeeded on a ceasefire with Al-Qaeda? No, it's a war which goes on and continues. And I want to emphasize something. That war, unfortunately and tragically, takes the lives of civilians. Israel is saddened deeply by the loss of civilian life, but Hamas knows how to use that to try to leverage the world's population against Israel. But you're 100% right that the moderate Islamic states around us, and Egypt is included in that, they get it. They understand that this battle is not just against Israel, but it's a battle which is for their benefit as well. Well, let me actually strengthen your question, but I want the listeners to understand what Israel does in order to prevent there from being civilian casualties. Before we go in and bomb a place, let me emphasize, bomb a place which is used by the terrorists to launch missiles at our cities, or as a starting point for tunnels to be dug into our cities to kill our civilians. Before we do that, we first drop leaflets, thousands and thousands of leaflets saying, in the next 48 hours, please leave this area. Then we actually call all of their telephones. We send SMSs to their text messages to their phones, and then we also have loudspeakers saying, please leave. We do all of that in advance because we want to minimize the casualties. There's no country in the world that has gone to this kind of extent to prevent civilian casualties. So that strengthens your question. Given that perspective, all the efforts that we go through to minimize, and Hamas's efforts to make sure those civilians stay, including shooting people in the streets if they try to leave, how is Israel viewed as the terror state over here that's raining terror on Gaza? I do unfortunately feel that it has to be said that it's anti-Semitism cloaked as anti-Israel. Somehow it's not PC to be anti-Semitic, so it's formed in this method of anti-Israel, of anti-the Israeli army, and all we can do is build a coalition with certainly Jews around the world, but our Christian friends around the world, and we're embraced by Christians all over the world. I was in Hungary 2 months ago, 12,000 Christians in an arena waving flags, showing support for Israel, and this exists all over the world. And also, like I said before, to moderate Muslims as well, to any people who are looking for a free society, a free world where there's freedom of religion and tolerance for one another, to reach out to those people and try to fight against these forces which can only be defined as anti-Semitic. But it's just critical that anyone who's listening understand how moral Israel is and how moral the army is and how we even lose soldiers. We lose our own soldiers because of our interest in not bombing and not trying to hurt civilians. I would hope, and this goes back to how you opened in terms of my growing up in America and feeling that America is a part of me. America, to me, always stood for this beacon of freedom and tolerance and right versus wrong. I remember growing up in the 80s and hearing about the Soviet Union as being the evil empire and a willingness to come out and say that. I'm waiting for that statement. I'm waiting for a statement against Hamas and against terrorism, unequivocal. Not with a but, not with, and we call on Israel. A statement of, we are together with you in Israel in this battle. This is a battle of all of us against evil. And of course Israel takes into account the civilian side. But the moment that's worked into the equation, the moment we say Israel has its right to defend itself, but the moment that but is there, then everyone loses the first part of that statement. It has to be said, Israel is fighting a just war, a war that we don't want. We don't want. I've spent the last few weeks going to funerals and going to hospitals and seeing the victims of this war on our side. We don't want to see 18, 19, 20-year-olds losing their lives and seeing families torn apart and broken for the rest of their lives. We have no interest. All we'd want to see is the Gaza Strip built into the Singapore of the Middle East and all the goods that flow in there be used to build castles for the people that live there. That's what we would like to see. And the moment that happens, of course, we would open our doors to peace and live side by side in perfect harmony. We need to hear those voices coming from every single leader in the United States. Hopefully, that could have an impact on the media here as well. And that's the tragedy here. When people talk to me about the suffering of the Palestinian children in Gaza, which we feel, that suffering should not just be defined by the images that you might see now of people who are unfortunately killed and caught in the crossfire here. The tragedy is that they live in a country with a leadership that has absolutely zero interest in giving them a life, a future, a hope for anything. It's just a launching pad to be able to spread Islamic jihad throughout the Middle East and the rest of the world. And if that means killing children in the process and giving them no future in the process and starving them in the process, that is what their leadership wants. We pulled out of the Gaza Strip. Israel pulled out of the Gaza Strip completely in 2005. We handed it over to the Palestinian leadership and we said, here, have your country. And I can tell you as a member of the Israeli parliament, if there was no terrorism there, if there was no efforts to smuggle in missiles from Iran into Gaza, we would have zero level of a siege or zero level of checking at the borders, and it would just be freedom for these people, and they could build a future for themselves. And unfortunately, all of the money which the international community has sent there has been used simply to build a terror network. And I want people to understand what this means. We're talking about miles and miles of tunnels that are made with concrete and with telephone wires and with air conditioning inside of it, stocked with ammunition, stocked with Israeli army uniforms, so they come out of these tunnels and disguise themselves as members of the Israeli army and just shoot our innocent women and children and destroy a country. That is what the money has been used for. What has to happen right now, and the United States needs to be the leader in this, is an international demand that any funding that goes into Gaza right now be used purely and simply to build it up for the people of Gaza so they can have a wonderful life the way you described, Deacon, the way we have in the United States. That's what it should be done. If we are truly loving people and caring people, that is what the focus has to be, and full support for Israel along the way, that if any terrorism rears its head, that we have absolute right to fight against that and to make sure that there's zero tolerance or zero fear of missiles or tunnels coming into Israel. And to all the listeners, we all know, and I know this having grown up in this country, if one missile from any country would just be lobbed into the United States, aimed at whoever it happens to hit, I absolutely know what the response of the United States Air Force would be, and I support that response in terms of making sure that it never happens again. If one tunnel was discovered coming into any city in our country with a potential threat of terrorists coming out and wreaking havoc in our country, I know what the United States would do, and that's what the United States should do, because we're committed to freedom and we're committed to protecting our citizens at the number one responsibility of the government. Israel should be held to the exact same standard and not be somehow expected to act any differently. And unfortunately, we have been. And unfortunately, we have to be patient because we have to take into account the international community. But I just can tell you that sitting here right now during this interview, I have an app on my phone which tells me when there's a red alert in Israel.
We both have it.
Yeah, we have it here.
Okay, and
They're
we have
going
missiles,
off.
We have missiles going off in different places, and that means that children have anywhere from 15 seconds to 90 seconds to find a shelter, or else they're in real danger of losing their lives. Now, I want to mention one thing very clearly. We do have a system in Israel called the Iron Dome, and that was built largely with funds from the United States of America. And the people of Israel feel incredible gratitude and indebted to the United States for recognizing the need to help Israel in this cause, and that helps generate the deeper partnership that we have. And therefore, we always want to emphasize that brotherhood and the sense that we're together in this, and we're so thankful for that, and it means the world to us that our children have that protection. But even though they have that protection, they still have to run to the shelters. You still have children living with this reality, and that's something which we want to end. We want to end this conflict with a situation where Gaza is disarmed and there's absolutely zero fear of these tunnels. And let's remember that there are 3 situations of United Nations schools that were used to house rockets that are used to then aim into Israel. And in one situation where the school actually gave the missiles over to them to use in other places. The United Nations apologized for that, but if there's anything which shows the hypocrisy in this situation, it's that story. And then the story came out about a missile that landed in a schoolyard, and Israel was blamed for sending a missile into a United Nations schoolyard. And then there's a thorough investigation, including video footage, which shows that Israel was not involved in that at all, and it actually was a missile that the United Nations might have likely handed over to Hamas, which was then sent to Israel, which fell short of its target and landed, unfortunately, in a schoolyard, killing Palestinian children, something which we join the world in mourning for. And the hypocrisy here is clear, and I do believe there needs to be some kind of rethinking about the situation, that you have a Human Rights Council which just points the finger at Israel without saying a word about Hamas and what they do. We have video footage of Hamas surrounding a missile with children and launching it, knowing that an Israeli helicopter will come seconds later, but can't fire at that missile launching site because they see the children there. And when we do that, we do call off the airstrike. Hospitals that are used as the command and control center for the Hamas leadership, and Israel will not bomb it as long as there are people there. They try to clear out the patients before they go in there. It's a situation where the finger only can be pointed at Hamas, at terror, and the United Nations, unfortunately, has become a safe haven for people who are looking to destroy freedom throughout the world, and that's a real shame. Thank you so much, and really, may God bless both Israel and the United States and everyone who's in this battle against the evil forces in the world, and that's the forces of Islamic Jihad, and hopefully, God willing, we can be successful in that battle.
Hold on. Thank you so much. Rabbi Dov Lipman,
Thank you. Have a
American-born
wonderful day.
member of the Israeli Knesset.